Hey everyone, and welcome back to Senior Care Insights.
Welcome to the deep dive, everyone. As we get older, certain habits can sneak up on us and affect our social connections and happiness, and I think that's what we're going to be exploring today.
Hmm.
And these aren't always the big things that we think about. They're often small, almost invisible habits that can really add up over time.
Like death by a thousand paper cuts.
Exactly. And it's easy to miss these things until, maybe like we start to feel a little bit isolated or not as connected as we used to be.
Right.
So we're going to be using the story of Julie, a 71-year-old woman who was feeling exactly that, kind of isolated. And her story is going to help us see how these sneaky habits play out in real life. And the good news is that once we recognize them, we can start to shift them.
Absolutely. Awareness is key.
So let's dive into the first habit. And this is one that I think a lot of people can relate to: negativity.
Hmm.
Julie mentioned that she'd been finding herself complaining more lately, about just little things, aches and pains,
Right.
world events, it's kind of like this low-grade grumbling that just never really went away.
That's incredibly common as we age. Our bodies change, the world changes, and it's tempting to focus on what's not right or how things used to be.
Yeah.
But the problem is negativity is like a virus. It spreads. And there's actually a scientific basis for this. Studies show that negativity increases stress hormones,
Oh, wow.
not just in the person who's complaining, but also in the people around them.
So it's not just about being a downer. You're actually creating a stressful environment for everyone around you.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that's why people might start avoiding those conversations, They just don't want to be around that negativity.
Yeah. It makes me think of something that Julie's daughter said to her. She said, "Mom, you bum me out."
Oof.
I can only imagine how hard that was to hear.
Yeah,
But it really underscores the impact of our words and how we can unintentionally push people away, even the people we love the most.
absolutely. But the good news is that once you recognize this pattern, you can start to shift it.
So how do we do that? What are some practical tips?
Well, instead of leading with complaints, try starting conversations with something positive.
Okay. So instead of saying, "My back is killing me today," you
Right.
can say, "What a gorgeous day it is."
Exactly. It doesn't have to be complicated. Expressing gratitude for a simple pleasure, like a cup of coffee or a phone call with a loved one, that can set a much more positive tone.
I can see how that would make a huge difference. It's like choosing to focus on the light instead of the shadows.
Exactly. And if you do need to vent, which is perfectly normal and healthy sometimes,
Sure.
set a time limit, allow yourself a couple of minutes to get it out, then consciously shift gears to something more constructive.
That's a brilliant idea. I'm stealing that one.
Please do.
But what about those times when we're not necessarily complaining, but we're just being, a little too critical? Like, I know I can get caught up in judging things that are new or different, get off my lawn.
Ah, yes, the get off my lawn syndrome. Instead of dismissing something out of hand, try replacing judgments with curious questions.
Okay.
So instead of saying, kids these days are glued to their phones,
Right.
you could say, hey, that game you're playing looks interesting. Tell me about it.
Yeah.
It shows you're open to learning, and that can help you build bridges instead of walls.
That is such a simple but powerful shift. It makes me wonder how many conversations I've shut down because I just wasn't curious enough.
Hmm.
And this actually leads us to the next habit that Julie talked about, and this one might surprise some people. It's neglecting her appearance.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, she shared that she had stopped wearing makeup. Her clothes had become kind of baggy. She just wasn't putting in the same effort that she used to, and she started to feel invisible.
This is another area where small changes can have a really big impact. And it's not about vanity, it's really about self-respect. When you take care of your appearance, even in small ways, it signals to yourself and to others that you matter, that you're worth taking care of. It's a form of self-love.
That's a great point. I know when I put effort into how I look, I feel more confident and more engaged with the world.
Absolutely.
And on the flip side, when I let things slide, I tend to withdraw a little bit. It's like my appearance is reflecting my inner state.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's actually a growing body of research that supports this connection between self-care and self-worth.
Oh, wow.
Neglecting our appearance can lower our self-esteem and contribute to feelings of depression and isolation.
That's huge. So what are some practical things that we can do to combat this? Because I know some people might be thinking, well, I'm too old for this, or I don't need to impress anyone.
Right. And you don't have to go overboard. The key is to find small steps that feel doable.
Okay.
Start with getting dressed every day, even if you're not going anywhere. It helps maintain a sense of routine and self-respect. Make sure you have a consistent hygiene routine. Showering, grooming, those little things that signal to your brain, hey, I matter.
That's so true. And I'm realizing that I often save my good clothes for special occasions, but why not feel good every day?
I love that. And don't forget the power of color and personal style.
Mhm.
A bright scarf or a favorite piece of jewelry. These things can lift your mood and make you feel more visible, more you.
It's like putting a little sparkle back in your step.
Exactly.
And you know what? Julie actually said that when she started making even small efforts with her appearance, she felt better about herself and people started noticing her
It's
again.
like she came back into focus.
Yeah. And this actually brings us to another habit that can really sneak up on us, especially as we get older, and that's becoming resistant to change. I think
Mhm.
we can all relate to feeling a little overwhelmed by the pace of the world sometimes, right?
Absolutely. The key is finding a balance between honoring your own pace and staying open to new things. The
Yeah.
world keeps moving. Yeah. If we dig our heels in and refuse to adapt,
Mhm.
we can end up feeling isolated and left behind.
Yeah. Julie, for example, refused to learn how to text. She insisted that people just call her.
Interesting.
And, while this might seem harmless, it created this growing disconnect between her and her family and friends who were using texting to, stay in touch, share quick updates.
Yeah. It's like she was slowly cutting those threads of connection.
And, it makes me think about my dad, who's not very tech savvy. And I think it's become a bit of a barrier between us. We don't share those quick updates or funny memes anymore. It's like we're speaking different languages.
I hear you. That's a perfect example of how rigidity can lead to isolation.
Mm.
And it's not about becoming a tech wizard or, embracing every single new trend.
Sure.
It's about maintaining that flexible mindset, that willingness to try.
Yeah.
So instead of saying, I don't need that, maybe try, I'll give it a shot. Or even better, can you show me how that works?
That's such a good point. It turns learning into this shared experience, instead of a point of contention.
Exactly. And those small changes like learning a new app or, trying to show your grandkids recommend, that can help you stay connected to their world, keep those lines of communication open.
I'm realizing I need to be more patient with my dad. Maybe even make it fun for him to learn a few new things.
Yeah, make it a project.
Exactly. And this leads us to another habit, and I know this one can be sensitive, hoarding and the difficulty of letting go of clutter.
Hmm.
Now, Julie's house was overflowing with things, and, it was becoming a barrier to having people over, and it was even posing some safety risks.
Yeah. This is an area where compassion is really important. Often the tendency to hold on to things stems from a fear of scarcity.
Mm.
This feeling that you might need something someday or that you're losing a part of yourself by letting go.
It's like holding on to the past too tightly, not allowing yourself to fully embrace the present.
Exactly. And studies show that living in a cluttered environment can elevate cortisol levels, which is the stress hormone,
Oh, wow.
leading to anxiety, sleep problems, even a weakened immune system. It's not just about aesthetics. It's about creating a safe and healthy living environment.
So where do you even begin to tackle something like this? I mean, for some people, it can feel incredibly overwhelming.
You're absolutely right. Start small,
Yeah.
focus on one drawer, one shelf, one box at a time.
Okay.
As you go through each item, ask yourself, do I use this? Does it bring me joy? If the answer to both is no, it's time to let it go.
That's good advice. It makes it feel less about getting rid of things and more about making space for what truly matters.
Exactly. And you can turn decluttering into a daily habit. Challenge yourself to get rid of just one item each day. An old magazine, a piece of junk mail, it adds up over time.
Small steps lead to big changes.
Abs-
And Julie was amazed at how much lighter she felt, both physically and emotionally, after she started decluttering. It was like clearing out the cobwebs, not just in her home, but in her mind, too.
It's amazing how those two things are connected, isn't it?
It really is. And this leads us to another habit that I think can sneak up on us. It's almost ironic. As we naturally slow down with age, we can become less patient with others who are maybe slow or inefficient.
Yeah, the patience paradox.
Exactly. We've all been there, fuming in a slow line at the grocery store, frustrated with a tech issue.
Right.
But when those frustrations become our default mode, it's not just bad for our relationships. It's actually bad for our health.
It really is. When we get impatient, our bodies go into fight or flight mode, releasing those stress hormones as if it's a life or death situation. And over time, that takes a toll on our blood pressure, our sleep, our overall well-being.
I never really thought about it that way. So being impatient is actually harming me.
In a sense, yes. It's not about suppressing those feelings completely, but about managing them. So when you feel that impatience rising, take a deep breath and ask yourself, is this really worth getting upset over?
Choose my battles wisely. But
Exactly.
you know what? Sometimes it's not even a big issue. It's just that people are moving slower than I want them to. Like, I find myself getting impatient with elderly people at the grocery store, and then I realize, wait a minute, I'm an elderly person.
That's a great point. It's so easy to fall into that judgment trap without even realizing it.
Mhm.
So instead of getting frustrated, try shifting your perspective. Imagine why that person might be taking their time. Maybe they have a disability you can't see. Maybe they're just having a rough day. A little empathy can go a long way.
I'm sensing a theme here. Pausing, taking a breath, and choosing a more mindful response. And that's good advice for anyone, really, not just older folks.
Absolutely.
And this leads us to a habit that I know I'm personally guilty of, overtalking and not really
Oh,
listening.
tell me more.
I have so many stories and experiences that I love to share, but I'm realizing that I'm not always the best giving other people space to talk.
Yeah, it's a common trap we fall into, especially as we get older. We want to share our wisdom, our experiences, but sometimes it comes across as, dominating the conversation.
Right.
And I think Julie's daughter actually summed it up perfectly when she said to her mom, "Mom, I don't feel heard. It's like our calls are all about you."
Ouch. But also a huge wake-up call.
It is.
I bet a lot of people can relate to that feeling of not being truly listened to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, it's not about shutting down our desire to share, but about finding that balance, becoming more mindful of how much space we're taking up in the conversation.
So how do we do that?
One simple tip is to ask open-ended questions that invite the other person to share their thoughts and feelings. So instead of just saying, "How are you?" you could try something like, "What's been on your mind lately?" Or, "Tell me something good that happened this week." It shifts the focus from you to them, and it opens the door for a deeper connection.
It's like turning a monologue into a dialogue. But what about those times when we interrupt, even if it's with a good intention? Like maybe we're trying to relate to what someone's saying.
Ah, yes. The classic conversational hijack. We've all been there.
Oh, yeah.
The key is to catch yourself doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Make a conscious effort to let the other person finish their thought before you jump in with your story.
Yeah.
It shows respect,
Yeah.
and it allows for a more genuine exchange to take place.
It's like being a good conversationalist is almost like being a good dancer.
I like that.
It's about finding that rhythm, that flow, that back and forth, being present in the moment. It's not just about the steps, it's about how you move with your partner.
Beautifully put.
And this actually brings us to our final habit for this part of our deep dive. And this one can be tough to admit, even to ourselves, pushing people away instead of asking for help. Julie was so determined to be independent that she wouldn't even accept help carrying groceries, even though she was clearly struggling.
It's so common, especially for people who have been strong and self-reliant their whole lives. We've been conditioned to believe that needing help is a sign of weakness. So we push through, even when we're exhausted or overwhelmed.
It's like we're wearing a badge of honor for being able to do it all ourselves, but secretly we're crumbling inside. And I know I've done this, try to be the strong one, even when I desperately needed support.
It takes courage to ask for help. But the irony is that refusing help can actually make us more isolated and dependent in the long run.
That's interesting.
When we allow others to assist us, it strengthens those bonds, and it creates a sense of shared humanity. It also gives others the opportunity to feel useful and valued, which is a gift in itself.
So how do we shift from that mindset of I have to do it all myself to one of it's okay to ask for help?
Start by practicing saying yes, thank you, when someone offers assistance. Reframe it as a gift, not a weakness. It might feel awkward at first, but it gets easier with practice.
I love that. It's like we're giving ourselves permission to receive as well as to give. And it takes the pressure off having to be perfect and self-sufficient all the time.
Exactly.
I'm starting to see how these seemingly small habits can have this ripple effect on our lives, And we've covered a lot of ground already, but we still have more to explore.
We do. So we're back. It's amazing how those small habits can really have a big impact,
It's true. I'm already starting to see some of these patterns in my own life. It's a little bit eye-opening.
Yeah. Well, awareness is the first step, right?
Absolutely.
And speaking of eye-opening, the next habit we're going to explore is being too frugal, too focused on saving, that you actually forget to enjoy life.
Yeah.
And, Julie, for instance, she was so worried about saving for a rainy day that she forgot to enjoy the sunshine. She was always clipping coupons, skipping vacations, even though she had enough money to live comfortably.
I know people like that,
Right.
always worried about what if and never really allowing themselves to have any fun.
It's like they're saving up for a life they're not living.
Yeah, exactly.
And, there's research that actually shows that spending money on experiences like travel or hobbies brings more happiness than buying material things.
Oh, interesting.
Experiences create memories that last a lifetime, whereas stuff just tends to clutter up our homes.
That's a good point. I've always been more of a saver myself, but I'm starting to realize that maybe I'm missing out on some valuable experiences. It's like I've been so busy preparing for the future that I've forgotten to live in the present.
That's a really important realization. It's all about finding that balance.
Yeah.
It's not about being reckless with your finances, but giving yourself permission to enjoy the fruits of your labor.
Yeah.
Maybe create a fun fund, a portion of your budget that's specifically for things that bring you joy.
I love that. A fun fund.
Yeah, why not?
It's like giving yourself a license to have fun.
Exactly. Could be anything, dining out, attending concerts, weekend trips. The point is to prioritize those experiences that nourish your soul.
And Julie, her wake-up call came when she finally agreed to go on a weekend getaway with her best friend. And she said it was like rediscovering a part of herself that she thought was lost.
It's never too late to rediscover that playful, adventurous spirit.
That's so true.
And it doesn't have to be, these grand, expensive adventures.
Sure.
Even small things, like having coffee with a friend or trying a new restaurant, can add a little spark to your day.
It's those little moments that make life rich.
Absolutely.
This makes me think about how we interact with younger generations. It's easy to fall into the trap of, talking down to them back in my day.
Oh, the infamous back in my day lecture.
Right.
A classic example of how good intentions can go awry. We want to share our wisdom and our experience, but it often comes across as condescending or dismissive.
Yeah. I mean, I remember Julie constantly making comments about how kids these days are spoiled or too reliant on technology, and it really made her grandson feel, judged and misunderstood.
That's the thing, right? Every generation faces its own unique set of challenges.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of lecturing, maybe we should be asking more questions.
Curiosity is key.
Exactly. Instead of dismissing new trends or ideas, try saying, tell me more about that. Or
Yeah.
what do you find interesting about that?
Mm-hmm.
It shows that you're genuinely interested in their perspective, and it opens the door to a more meaningful conversation.
That's a great point. My kids just roll their eyes when I start reminiscing about the good old days. So maybe instead of comparing, I should try to find common ground. Like, hey, when I was your age, we didn't have smartphones, but we did have. And then share a story that connects our experiences.
I love that. You're building a bridge between generations. You're recognizing that we all have something to learn from each other.
Yeah. And it's a two-way street, right?
Absolutely.
We can learn from them just as much as they can learn from us.
For sure. And speaking of learning and growing, let's talk about a habit that can be really heavy, dwelling on the past, especially regrets and grudges.
Oh, this is a big one. I think we all have those what-ifs and if-onlys that we carry around, but sometimes they can really weigh us down.
It's like carrying a heavy suitcase filled with old baggage. It weighs us down. It prevents us from fully embracing the present moment.
Julie would constantly replay old arguments, missed opportunities in her mind, and it just kept her stuck in this cycle of negativity.
That's the thing, right? The past is unchangeable. We can't go back and rewrite history, no matter how much we wish we could.
I know, it's hard. So how do we let go of those heavy thoughts and feelings?
Acceptance is key.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about condoning or excusing hurtful behavior, but acknowledging that what happened, happened. We can't change it,
Okay.
but we can learn from it. The key is to shift our focus from trying to control the past to learning from it and using those lessons to inform our present choices without letting it define us.
That's a really helpful reframe.
But what about those times when we feel like we were wronged?
Oh, yeah.
It's so hard to just let go of that hurt and anger.
It is.
And that's where forgiveness comes in. And forgiveness, it's not about the other person. It's about freeing yourself from that burden of resentment.
Okay.
Holding on to grudges is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
Wow.
It's only hurting you.
That's such a powerful analogy. So it's really about choosing to release those negative emotions for our own well-being, not necessarily for the other person's sake.
Exactly. And it doesn't mean condoning what happened or minimizing the pain that it caused. It simply means choosing to let go of the power that it has over you.
Yeah, I get that. And, Julie found that process to be very challenging, but ultimately incredibly liberating. It was like this weight had been lifted from her shoulders. And it makes me wonder, are there other things that we tend to hold on to that are weighing us down, maybe without even realizing it?
Absolutely. And this brings us to another really important aspect of aging well, taking care of our physical health.
Hmm,
We often ignore those aches and pains and warning signs telling ourselves, oh, it's just part of getting older.
I'm guilty of that.
But the truth is, our bodies change as we age, and it's more important than ever to pay attention to what they're telling us.
It's so easy to brush off like a twinge in my knee or a nagging headache thinking, oh, it's nothing. But then I remember Julie's story. She ignored her dizziness and blurry vision until she ended up falling and fracturing her hip.
That's a really stark reminder that even seemingly minor symptoms can be indicators of something more serious. Early detection is key, so don't be afraid to advocate for yourself. Ask questions. Seek second opinions if you need to. Make sure you understand your treatment options. You are your own best health advocate.
Yeah, we have to be. It's like we have to become our own health detectives, right?
Mm,
Paying attention to the clues that our bodies are giving us and not being afraid to seek expert help when we need it.
exactly. And, healthy aging isn't just about addressing medical issues. It's about making lifestyle choices that support our overall well-being.
Hmm.
Eating a nutritious diet, staying physically active, getting enough sleep, managing stress. These are all essential pieces of the puzzle.
And I think, don't forget the importance of social connections, too. I know we talked about that earlier, but I think it's worth repeating.
Couldn't agree more. Strong relationships are like vitamins for the soul. They provide us with a sense of belonging, purpose, and support, which are essential for both our physical and mental health.
Yeah, I'm realizing that taking care of myself isn't just about me. It's about being able to show up fully for the people I love. If I'm not feeling my best, I can't be the best version of myself for them.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
But we've talked about a lot of serious stuff today. Is there room for, fun in all of this?
Of course. In fact, making time for fun and laughter is essential for aging well.
Hmm.
I think sometimes we slowly lose that sense of playfulness and wonder as we get older.
Yeah.
But the truth is, laughter is good medicine. It releases endorphins, reduces stress hormones, boosts our immune system.
I remember Julie talking about how she used to love dancing, but she hadn't done it in years.
Hmm,
She felt silly at first, but once she started moving to her favorite music, it was like she came alive again.
that's the spirit. Life is meant to be enjoyed, not just endured.
That's so true.
Find those activities that light you up. Spending time with loved ones, pursuing hobbies, or just doing something silly that makes you smile.
Yeah. Don't take yourself too seriously.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Have fun.
Well, this has been such an enlightening conversation. We've covered so much ground, but there's still one final habit that we need to address. And it's something that can happen so gradually that we might not even realize it's happening until it's too late. So, we're back. And it's incredible how these subtle habits can really shape our lives as we get older.
Yeah, they're like those little cracks in the pavement. They seem harmless at first, but over time they can become, huge potholes.
That's a great analogy. And speaking of, fading away, the final habit we're going to talk about is a tricky one, allowing ourselves to become invisible.
Hmm.
And this isn't about, literal invisibility, of course, but it's about like fading into the background, becoming less engaged with the world, even with the people we care about.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like slowly withdrawing from life. And it often starts with small choices, like declining social invitations, not participating in activities that we used to enjoy, or just not putting ourselves out there as much as we used to.
It's like we're slowly dimming our own light.
Exactly. And Julie's a perfect example of this. She slowly retreated from her social life. She stopped going to her book club meetings, started turning down family gatherings, and she ended up spending most of her days at home feeling really isolated.
It's so easy to fall into that trap, especially as we get older. Our social circles change, we might experience loss, maybe we just feel a little overwhelmed by the world, and it's tempting to pull back and, retreat into our own little bubble.
Sure, but the problem is when we do that, we create this self-fulfilling prophecy. We stop putting ourselves out there, so we have fewer opportunities for connection.
Yeah. And I imagine that can lead to loneliness, depression, even declining health.
Absolutely. Social connection is so vital for our well-being, regardless of our age. Our relationships give us that sense of belonging, purpose, and support.
It's like those connections are the threads that weave us into the fabric of life.
I like that.
So how do we fight this urge to just fade away? Because it can feel really daunting, especially if we've already started down that path.
Well, I think it starts with recognizing the value of our presence in the world.
Hmm.
We all have something unique to offer, regardless of our age. Our experiences, our wisdom, our perspective. These are all valuable gifts that we can share with others.
It's like reminding ourselves that we matter, that our voices deserve to be heard, but how do we put that into action? It's easy to say be more engaged, but what does that actually look like in everyday life?
It can be as simple as making eye contact with the cashier at the grocery store,
Hmm.
striking up a conversation with someone in your neighborhood, or reaching out to a friend you haven't spoken to in a while.
It's those little acts of connection that remind us that we're all part of something bigger than ourselves.
Exactly. And if you're feeling lonely or isolated, don't be afraid to ask for help. Reach out to someone you trust. Maybe join a support group, connect with a therapist, or explore online communities that share your interests. There are so many resources available, but we have to be willing to take that first step.
It's like throwing a lifeline to yourself and allowing others to pull you back in. I remember Julie saying that she felt like a ghost for a while.
Mm,
But once she started taking those small steps to reconnect, it was like she came back to life.
that's a beautiful way to put it. It's never too late to re-engage with life and reclaim your visibility.
Well, this has been such an incredible deep dive. Exploring these habits that can sneak up on us as we age has been eye-opening and honestly a little bit challenging at
So
times.
it's not always easy to face these things.
No, it's not, but it's so important and ultimately it's incredibly empowering because the takeaway here is that we have more control over how we age than we might realize.
We absolutely do.
And by recognizing these habits, making conscious choices, and reaching out for support when we need it, we can create a more fulfilling and connected life no matter what our age. Thank you all so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found these insights helpful and inspiring. If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a like and subscribe to our channel. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave a comment below. And please share this video with anyone who you think might benefit from these ideas. Remember, it's never too late to make positive changes that enhance your well-being and enrich your connections with others. Until next time, take care.